If history has been so picked apart over time, will we ever be able to know our whole story? What is human history? Human history is a record of the victors, purpose, and power. The agricultural revolution and evolution are at least vaguely familiar with these concepts. Is it really this simple? What if the stories of the giants, disasters, gods, angels, and ancients are more literal than they seem at first glance? If we look closer, our history might be revealed. It is a story that upends conventional knowledge and the history of power. It's an alternative history, a history that has been censored from human understanding. It has been mostly forgotten or ignored until now. A group of teenagers had found something, not knowing that they had made a historic discovery. It all started in early 1946, West Bank, when a group of Bedouin teenagers tended to their sheep and goats near the ancient settlement of Qumran. The teenagers were bored, and to pass the time, they began to throw rocks that they found across the rugged desert terrain. However, when one rock was thrown into the dark expanse of a cave, it made a very loud shattering noise echoing from within. The teenagers were surprised and wanted to see what was inside of it. They went inside the cave, exploring the place around, when they came across a collection of large clay jars. One of the large clay jars had been broken. Inside the jars, there were a series of ancient rolls. Then, years later, of discoveries, treasure hunters, historians, and archaeologists found additional scroll fragments in 10 other caves in that area. Over 800 and 900 manuscripts were collectively known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Together with those manuscripts, there were large portions of a mysterious non-canonical religious text which had been forgotten. This was called the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is made up of 5 books: the Book of Watchers, Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Dream Visions, and the Epistles of Enoch. All of these contained 100 chapters. What stories do these books have? The books tell the story of Enoch, the 7th patriarch in the book of Genesis. Enoch was the father of Methuselah and grandfather of Noah. You might wonder which Noah we're talking about. The same Noah that was in the biblical story of Noah's Ark. However, this was not the story about Noah's Ark. The Book of Enoch provides an entirely different recounting of the events that lead up to the great flood of Noah's time. This is an entirely different doctrinal history. It is a story about the Watchers. What are the Watchers? What is the story behind them? Watchers are explained in biblical terms as fallen angels sent to earth to watch over humans. These stories were written at some undefined and ancient point in time. Far from merely watching humans, these watchers, the fallen angels, became captivated by human women. They began to engage in depraved sexual acts with them. Then, children got born. Interbreeding between watchers and humans, the Nephilim, took place. Did the book say anything about how the Nephilim were? They were described as giants and savages that endangered and pillaged humanity. They were supernatural and were described as man-eating giants. The gods were angry about what the Watchers had done, so they decided to do something. They chained them in an underground prison within the earth. Enoch was between the gods and the imprisoned Watchers. This book describes the journey of Enoch between heaven and earth. His role was as an intermediary, and it tells how he flew with the angels and saw the rivers and mountains and the very ends of the earth from above. Even though Enoch had intervened, the gods still decided the atrocity that the earth had become must be punished. The punishment was a flood. This punishment would destroy the Nephilim and cement the Watchers in their prison. What is said that would happen to Enoch? Enoch would be whisked away to heaven in a fiery chariot. The book of Genesis, which also tells the great flood in Abrahamic traditions, also references the Nephilim in chapter 6. It references the Nephilim as heroes that were old and warriors of renown. However, this is not the only place in the biblical canon in which the Nephilim appear. It is believed that the Israelites visited a land that Nephilim inhabited. The Nephilim were so giant and extensive that they made the Israelites look like grasshoppers. However, many things in modern times are seen as symbolic, that is, more philosophical myth than historical record. But there is evidence of a great flood in the earth's past. It is incidentally spoken in countless religious and cultural traditions across the world. It makes us question, has beings like the Nephilim giants actually existed on earth? There is a lot of evidence and a dozen stories of enormous skeletons found unearthed across North America. Many newspaper articles suggest that the giants existed together with early humans. However, this is not a phenomenon that only occurred in the United States. Enormous skeletons have also been found in the Amazon rainforest and Africa. Stories of giants permeate human history and tradition. Marco Polo, a very famous explorer, wrote about a race of giants in Zanzibar. Marco Polo had described them as so strong that they could carry as many as 4 ordinary men. However, the people of modern-day Tangier, Morocco, used to claim that their city's giant was named Antaeus. The Irish myth claims that the so-called Giant's Causeway off the northeast coast of Ireland had astonished 40,000 interlocking columns of rock. It was believed that the Irish giant Finn McCool had made these columns of stones so he could walk across the sea to Scotland just to fight another giant. There are stories of giants. Norse legends and ancient Greek mythology too. It makes us wonder if giants did exist, as these records across countless cultures claim. Then the Book of Enoch is less symbolic than it might appear. It is a less fantastical myth and more grounded in actual history. For centuries, the Book of Enoch is a big part of both Christian and Jewish religious traditions. Many have accepted the Book of Enoch as scripture. Many also have suggested that the Book of Enoch was the inspiration for the Book of Genesis. The suggestion had come due to their many parallels and overlapping stories. However, the most critical question is, what had happened? Why is the Book of Enoch not part of the Bible? To answer this complicated question, we must go back to the early centuries after the death of Jesus Christ. We must go far from the rigid canon of 39 Old Testament and 27 New Testament books that now are known as the Bible. The broad spectrum of Christian tradition consisted of numerous gospels and religious texts. After the death of Jesus, the Christian religion seemed to grow. Then, the burgeoning Christian church needed to know which texts should be read and followed, and which teachings should be applied. The church needed to create uniformity. The church needed an official canon. The story popularized in modern times, the Da Vinci Code, by Dan Brown's seminal work, is remembered as happening at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. It was said that Emperor Constantine and other high-ranking church authorities shaped the Christian canon to conform to their secret agenda. However, this is not accurate. The Council of Nicaea did not determine the official Christian doctrine. Dan Brown is not the one to blame. A famous philosopher, Voltaire, made the same assertion. The whole story might not be factually accurate, but it is correct in a sense. The church members that were high-ranking did pick and choose what to include in the official biblical canon. They cast their opponents as heretics, argued and pulled strings, and sought to expand their power. It didn't take place at a single council. It was a very long process between the 1st and the 4th centuries. However, the process was complete by the end of the 4th century. Then, the Bible was officially set. However, the Bible was sent, but without the Book of Enoch. It makes us question, how come something as influential as the Book of Enoch is left out? Firstly, we must examine other Gospels which were also censored from the final product. It is worth mentioning the Gospel of Peter, a fragment found in Egypt in 1886. This fragment tells the long-missing story of a resurrected Jesus leaving his tomb. This story features 2 gigantic angels and a floating cross that talks. It was said that they heard a voice from the heavens, saying, "Thou hast preached to them that sleep." A response was heard from the cross, saying, "Yea." It is also worth mentioning the Gospel of Mary. Mary Magdalene was named not only as one of Jesus' disciples, but his favorite one, even as his wife. The story tells how the disciple Peter asks about how he and the others must listen to Mary. Matthew had responded by saying, "If the Savior made her worthy, who are you then, for your part, to cast her aside? Surely the Savior knows her full well. That is why he has loved her more than us." These Gospels tell extraordinary and history-challenging stories indeed. Should it be no surprise that these texts were also censored by the early power brokers of the official Christian canon? There is a possibility that the Book of Enoch has been forgotten. The pre-modern version of the text was written in Ge'ez, which was an ancient African language. It was the version that Richard Lawrence, the Archbishop of Cashel, used in 1821 to produce the first ever English translation of the book. This version is used to inform the studies of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Even though the Book of Enoch was omitted from the established Christian canon and forgotten, there are still references to the Nephilim in Genesis and Numbers. There is also an extensive recounting of Enoch's lineage in Genesis. The Book of Hebrews also talked about Enoch and how God had taken him away. It referenced Enoch being taken to heaven by the fiery chariot before the great flood. In Jude, an entire paragraph is transcribed word for word from Enoch, claiming that the book may have served as an early inspiration for canonical biblical texts. Corinthians 11:5-6 contains instructions from St. Paul saying that the women should cover their heads while in church. This reference seemed like a direct reference to the fact that the watchers in the Book of Enoch were attracted to women with long hair. However, this practice remains in Roman Catholicism and Islam in the modern days. Even though the Book of Enoch was censored or forgotten, it never truly disappeared. However, the story behind the Book of Enoch is something even more profound. Its extraordinary stories go beyond simply whether or not it is part of the Christian canon. It had been said that Enoch, the seventh patriarch of the Bible, reflects the seventh antediluvian king, in Menjarana, in Babylonian tradition. Enoch was believed to be the same as the god Hermes by the ancient Greeks. However, the ancient Egyptians had someone similar in their tradition too. There are a lot of examples. However, it makes us question why does Enoch, no matter his name, keeps appearing in the traditions of the ancients. This is a highly complex question, and the answer might go back further than the Egyptians, Greeks, or even the Babylonians. Sumerian texts had noted that the earth was visited by a group of supernatural beings in the past. It was said that these visitors are described in a very similar way to the descriptions of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. As called in the Book of Enoch, the Watchers in Sumerian's texts were named differently. They call these beings the Anunnaki. Anunnaki means those who came from the heavens. These beings were gods to the Sumerians. However, to the modern thinkers like Erich von Däniken and Zacharias Sitchin, they were an ancient race of aliens who came to Earth. What's interesting about this is that the Sumerian texts tell stories of these Anunnaki precisely like the story of the Watchers noted in the Book of Enoch. The story is also about the beginning, to interbreed with human beings, creating an entirely new species and reflecting the creation of the Nephilim. Precisely like the gods of the Book of Enoch, even the Anunnaki became angry with the earth's condition and brought a great flood. It makes us think that there is a possibility that the Book of Enoch, as well as the other related traditions, are retelling the older Sumerian story of the Anunnaki. It is worth mentioning the agricultural revolution, which began around 10,000 BCE. What happened during this time? During this time, human beings transitioned from a lifestyle of hunting and gathering to one of agriculture and settlement. Based on the historical record, the earliest 9500 BCE, in Kurdistan, in what now is modern, wheat began to get cultivated. Peas, oats, and lentils grew, while goats and sheep were domesticated. Then, 500 years later, people were making pottery, copper, and lead smelting. However, this ancient Kurdish culture was the first one to develop a script suddenly. This script is known as one of humanity's earliest literate societies. How is this possible for human beings to jump this fast? To evolve dramatically? Another interesting fact about this is that the Kurdish people claim to be the descendants of the children of the jinn. Or, in other words, the children of spirits. Was this an ancient cultural reference to procreation between Anunnaki and human women? Sumerians had noted that it was the Anunnaki the ones who had brought advanced knowledge and technology to human beings. Many have suggested that this explains the seemingly impossible monuments around the world, such as the pyramids of Giza or Teotihuacan. These are ancient monuments of extraordinary sophistication, which is completely unexplained by the cultural and social circumstances of the historical record. Is this also an explanation of how human beings could transition from nomadic hunter-gatherers to sophisticated civilizations? Since all of this happened in a historically insignificant amount of time, it is extraordinary how the Book of Enoch also describes an almost identical process. The story of how the Watchers had mirrored the Anunnaki in providing the humans with advanced knowledge and technology. It was said that they taught humans metallurgy, mining, science, and medicine. They have taught humans how to read, write, and even read the stars. They taught the humans to wear cosmetics and make jewelry. They also shared secrets of the art of war. There is a fragment in the Book of Enoch 8:1-3 that notes, "And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them and bracelets and ornaments, the use of antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids, all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways." This once again makes us wonder, was the Book of Enoch reflecting and retelling the story of the Anunnaki? Can we say that the Anunnaki helped the historical records completely unexplained phenomenons and social circumstances? Anunnaki must have indeed helped ancient humans with the pyramids of Egypt, right? An ancient Arabian historian named al-Makrizi noted that these pyramids were built by a king named Censored, who lived before the Great Flood. You might say all right, and not find anything weird about this. However, the name Censored translated into Hebrew means Enoch. What a coincidence, right? Here is another chapter taken from the book of Enoch. In those days mine eyes saw the secrets of the lighting and the lights, and the judgments they execute, and they lighten for a blessing or a curse, as the Lord of spirits willeth. And there I saw the secrets of the thunder, and how it resounds above in the heaven, the sound thereof is heard, and he caused me to see the judgments executed on the earth, whether they be for well-being and blessing, or a curse, according to the world of the Lord of spirits. And after that, all the secrets of the lights and lightning were shown to me, and they lighten for blessing and satisfying. Many have suggested that this chapter was meant to illuminate the riddles of energy and electricity. It relates directly to the Anunnaki, who have been trying to reveal similar secrets to the human being through crop circles. You might be familiar with how many crop circles have appeared across the world in the past few decades. Those crop circles contain complex mathematical equations, magnetic diagrams and motors, mechanical routers, and the field lines of an electrical charge. Many said that those are the work of Anunnaki. We must consider the description of Enoch's journey when he met the gods. We must keep in mind the UFO sightings that accompany these crop circles. Enoch had described that he was taken to a floating palace. He said that the place was huge, like carved glass. Enoch said that the floor had glass plates, and you could see the stars crossing through them. Many had wondered if the fiery chariot that took Enoch away was an alien spacecraft. It's hard to believe that stories as mind-blowing as those that permeated ancient cultures for thousands of years be largely forgotten. However, listening to those stories reshapes our human history and redefines what human beings are. Their exclusion is perhaps no surprise. Were these stories erased? Maybe not. Let's talk about the well-known biblical story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. However, we must read it metaphorically. It all starts when God creates Adam to watch over the earth, as the gods sent the watchers in the book of Enoch. However, from Adam's rib, God creates Eve. Adam and Eve procreate, representing the interbreeding between the watchers and human females. Then, Adam and Eve are told that they could eat anything in the Garden of Eden. However, there was something that they couldn't eat: the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge, representing the watchers bringing advanced technology and ability to human beings. Were the human beings mentally evolved enough to handle it? The tree of knowledge provided Adam and Eve with the knowledge of God. The book of Enoch describes how the watchers revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved for heaven, which means we are striving to learn. It is easy to see the parallels between the book of Enoch and the story of Adam and Eve. Is it possible that the people who had told the story of Adam and Eve were simply retelling the story of the book of Enoch? It makes us question our human history. Is human history that which is understood through officially sanctioned history books? Or is it something more profound, more incredible, if perhaps forgotten? Do you think the answer has been hiding in plain sight the whole time?